Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring the beautiful, deeply fascinating, and honestly, incredibly dangerous duality of fairy romances in Celtic folklore. We're going to dig into the ancient stories that tried to explain those very real, sometimes overwhelming human experiences of love, obsession, and the driving forces that make us who we are.
Have you ever had a moment where an idea hits you so hard it literally feels like there's a fire in your veins? You know that feeling, right? Suddenly, you can barely stand still because of this overwhelming excitement and need to just create. Throughout history, artists have felt this massive surge and wondered, where is this actually coming from? Is it entirely within us, or is it some outside force? For centuries, creators have blamed these sudden bursts of intense creativity on a muse.
Now, while the ancient Greeks famously worshipped 9 beautiful goddess muses who bestowed inspiration, Celtic folklore introduces us to a very different kind of entity. Here, we meet ancient fairies who offer incredible inspiration and intoxicating romance, but usually at a completely terrifying cost. Let's take a look at the dark bargain these Celtic muses actually demand.
Part 1. The All-Consuming Muse. Meet the Lena Han She. Her name literally translates to fairy lover. This is a seductive fairy who specifically targets talented artists. We're talking painters, sculptors, musicians, poets, basically anyone who possesses a genuine, deep-rooted love for their craft. And she's a shapeshifter, which means she can change her form to perfectly match the deepest desires of her intended target. By seducing the artists, she sparks an intense inspiration that forces them to work absolutely tirelessly at their craft.
And this brilliantly illustrates why we as humans desperately need balance. Because the price for this otherworldly inspiration? It's steep. The artist's passion becomes so all-consuming that they literally stop eating and sleeping. The fairy genuinely seems to care for her human lover, but her presence has a vampiric quality to it. She's slowly draining the life out of the mortal. Unable to sustain this unnatural level of passion, the human wastes away. Eventually, the fairy leaves, taking their talent and desire to live right along with her, leaving the mortal to die young.
The famous poet William Butler Yeats actually believed deeply in the Lena Han She, referencing her all the time in his work. He called her the Gaelic muse, noting that she gives inspiration to those she persecutes. Yeats wrote that the fairy literally lives on the life of the mortal. And even more chillingly, he believed that when these tragic young poets finally die, death isn't actually an escape. Nope, she takes their spirit with her directly to the fairy realm.
Yeats wasn't the only one fascinated by this dark muse either. Fellow poet John Keats captured this exact tragedy in his haunting poem, La Belle Dame sans Merci, or The Beautiful Lady Without Mercy. In the poem, a young knight is lured into the meadows by a beautiful, wild-eyed fairy. She sings to him, feeds him wild honey, and lulls him to sleep. But while he's asleep, he gets a terrifying dream of pale, dead kings and warriors. These are her past victims, crying out a horrid warning that he's been enthralled. He wakes up abandoned, dying of a broken heart on a cold, dark hillside.
Part 2. The Mischievous Heartbreaker.
Notice the stark contrast between these two entities. While the Lena Han She seeks out talented artists and literally drains them to death, the Gan-can-ah is way more indiscriminate. He targets unsuspecting mortals and simple milkmaids, leaving them not dead, but entirely heartbroken, and sometimes driven to sheer madness.
The Gan-can-ah, which translates to love talker, is basically the Don Juan of the fairy world. He's unnervingly beautiful and famously known for his hypnotic charm. Typically, he's depicted as a tall, handsome man with ice blue eyes and jet black hair, though, like a lot of Fae, he can change his appearance to suit whatever his target is into. But his real weapon is his skin. It secretes a hypnotic toxin. Once he touches you, you become instantly enamored and intensely obsessed with him, regardless of whether you're already in a committed relationship.
He essentially embodies pure idleness. He seduces a mortal once, then casually wanders off to smoke tobacco in his wooden pipe and drink ale like absolutely nothing happened. A magical deadbeat, if you will. Interestingly, he's actually a distant relative of the leprechaun. If you're ever worried about running into him, there are a few massive red flags. People who claim to have met him say his beauty is so unnatural it's actually frightening. He casts absolutely no shadow, and most importantly, he'll constantly try to charm you into giving him your name. If you ever meet an unnaturally gorgeous man who casts no shadow, be warned, he is a ruthless heartbreaker, and you must never ever give him your name or he'll enslave you to his world.
Part 3. The Heroic Sacrifice.
This brings us to a centuries-old Scottish ballad that features a genuinely refreshing twist for the time it was written: a female hero. In the tale of Tamlin, a bold, incredibly strong-willed young woman named Janet fearlessly enters the beautiful but heavily guarded woods of Gancanagh. Despite warnings that an elven knight demands a toll from anyone who enters, Janet boldly walks right in and plucks a rose. And of course, this summons the guardian of the forest himself, the elven knight, Tamlin.
But instead of punishing her, Tamlin actually admires Janet's bravery, and they fall deeply in love. But Tamlin confesses a pretty tragic secret. He isn't actually a fairy at all. He was born a mortal man, the grandson of the Earl of Roxburgh. Years ago, he fell from his horse while hunting and was caught by the Queen of the Fairies. Now he's forced to guard her forest by day and dwell in the fairy realm by night. But here's the real danger. Every 7 years, the fairies have to pay a tithe to hell, and Tamlin is terrified that he's going to be the chosen sacrifice. He desperately needs Janet's help to escape. So Tamlin gives Janet one extremely dangerous, terrifying chance to save him. On the night of Samhain, he's going to ride through the woods with the fairy wild hunt. Janet has to hide, wait for the black and brown horses to pass, and when she finally sees Tamlin on his milk-white steed, she has to pull him down. To frighten her into letting go, the fairies are going to magically transform him into terrifying beasts, a bear, then a lion, and finally into a piece of red-hot iron. Janet has to bravely hold on through all these fiery, terrifying transformations without ever letting go until he turns into a glowing coal or wand, which she then has to immediately throw into a well. Talk about pressure, right?
Well, Janet is just as bold as her reputation suggests. At midnight, she hears the fairy bridles, waits for that white steed, and pulls her lover down. She heroically endures the terrifying trials. In some versions of the tale, she actually burns her hand severely on the red-hot iron, which just makes her sacrifice even more meaningful. She holds on tight until the final transformation, throws him in the well, and successfully covers his restored, naked mortal body with her green cloak, hiding him from the fairy's magic.
As dawn rises, the furious fairy queen realizes she's been completely beaten. She screams out this bitter threat, declaring that if she had known fair Janet would win him, she would have ripped out Tamlin's heart of flesh and replaced it with stone, and replaced Janet's eyes with wood. The queen's spiteful, terrifying fury really highlights just how triumphant and extraordinary Janet's brave sacrifice truly was. Janet and Tamlin escape, returning to our castle to live a long, happy life.
Part 4. Balancing Passion and Reason.
These stories map out a very clear psychological spectrum for us. The Lianhan Shi serves as a huge warning against the draining nature of pure, unchecked obsession, how giving everything to your passion can leave you totally empty. The Gan-can-ah shows us the destabilizing chaos of intoxicating, superficial infatuation. But Tamlin and Janet, they celebrate the grounding, heroic nature of reasoned love. Janet succeeds because she loves with both her deeply brave heart and her clear, unshakable head.
This beautiful, ancient folklore actually perfectly mirrors the wisdom of Benjamin Franklin, who famously said, "If passion drives you, let reason hold the reins." These myths remind us that we absolutely need that fiery inspiration, that spark from the muse, to create and to love. But if we don't have the grounding strength and reason to control it, it'll destroy us.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. Look at the pursuits, the loves, and the creative fires in your own life right now. Are you letting your passions consume you like a dark muse? Or are you, like Janet, firmly and bravely holding the reins? Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating folklore with me today. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.